On my previous S25 Ultra video, you asked me, or some of you asked me, to compare it to the OnePlus 13. And I thought that was such an interesting device to choose because we're talking about a flagship phone that costs $899 versus $1299. Now, there are some regions where the Galaxy phone might be cheaper because of aggressive trade-in deals, but depending on where you live, OnePlus tends to have great trade-in deals as well. There are some design differences between both products. The Galaxy S25 Ultra this year squared off the edges, rounded off the corners. And in some ways it's more comfortable, like the corners themselves, but the edges are a little bit pinchy. Not as drastic as the iPhone 12 or iPhone 13, but it definitely makes the device feel cheaper than before. Personally, I found the S24 Ultra more comfortable to hold in the hand. And the OnePlus 13 may not feel like the most premium device, but it's softer in the hand. They reduce the edges of the display so it's easier to type on. Now, the OnePlus 13 does have a massive circular camera bump, which kind of removes some of the real estate on the back when you're holding the phone. But at the end of the day, 90% of you are probably placing cases on these devices, so it really doesn't matter how the phone feels naked. The Galaxy S25 Ultra is heavier at 218 grams. It's IP68, but the OnePlus 13 is IP69, and that just means it can take some water jet sprays. It's a little bit more durable when it comes to that, but quite frankly, I don't think this means a lot to most people, but as you can see, they're pushing the boundaries of how durable these phones can get. The back of these phones are obviously glass. One's Gorilla Glass, the other one is using some sort of ceramic shield. The OnePlus is frosted. They have some cool colors to choose from. Same with Samsung, but in terms of fingerprints, you're gonna see a lot less of them on the OnePlus device. Buttons are interesting because they're kind of in the same position and they're both very clicky. They both feel fantastic to press, but you have a mute switch on the OnePlus 13, and I absolutely love this. Like, just being able to click it, put it on silent whenever you want to is such a handy feature. But overall appearance, I think there's just a bit more character to the OnePlus phone. Samsung has been muting the look of their devices over the years. And again, this is super subjective, but there's just a little bit more class to the back of this phone compared to the Galaxy device. Now, they both have stereo speakers, obviously, and I do think the stereo speakers sound better on the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now, there is one feature the OnePlus 13 has that the Galaxy S25 Ultra doesn't, and that's an infrared sensor at the top of the phone. If you want, you can use your phone as a remote to control your TV. It's a great way to play a prank in class if they roll in an old TV to watch a movie. But the Galaxy S25 Ultra has an S Pen, and this is one of the only phones out there that still has this feature. Now, I know they took away the Bluetooth functionality. I already talked about this in my S25 Ultra review. I'm not going to talk about it again, but the pen is still good. You know, it's smooth. It writes very well. The button can still be utilized to bring up Air Command or double tap the display to write a note or erase anything that you're writing down. It's a solid feature if you use it. The display is where things get super spicy because you would think that the Galaxy phone has the best display on the market. That's no longer the case. In some ways it's better. Like, for one, it's a bigger display, 6.9 inches compared to 6.82, and it has an anti-reflective coating, which means whenever you're looking at the display, it can reduce the amount of reflection that hits it. I love this technology. I want it to be on every phone. You're constantly changing different lighting environments, and if you can reduce that reflection, it just makes looking at your screen much more enjoyable. But there is an advantage to the OnePlus phone. For one, you get a brighter display. Like, it has a peak brightness of over 4,000 nits compared to only 2,600 on the S25 Ultra. Now, I only say only because 2600 is still really bright, but it really matters if you're watching HDR content. Like HDR, you need those little windows of peak brightness to be as bright as possible to really separate what you're looking at. The other advantage to the OnePlus phone is the fact that it's a 10-bit display, whereas the Galaxy S25 Ultra is still stuck at 8-bit. Now, I'll be quite honest with you. 8-bit is only around 16 million colors. The eyes can only see 16 million colors, and I would find it very hard-pressed if you could see the difference between both of these displays. But here's the thing. Both of these phones can record 10 10-bit footage. If you want to watch HDR content, it has to be 10-bit. If you're editing 10-bit footage on your phone, you have more data to play with, which means if you're pushing it and trying to bring out the shadows, it's gonna look better with 10-bit footage compared to 8. 8, you just don't have as much information, and that's where the banding comes in, or the extra noise. So at the end of the day, for most people, they're probably not gonna care, but if you're recording 10-bit footage, your display should also be able to show 10-bit as well. Also, if you suffer from PWM flicker, it's a very small minority of you. The OnePlus 13 has a PWM modulation frequency over 2000 compared to just over 400 on the S25 Ultra. So your eyeballs will probably appreciate the OnePlus 13 just a little bit more. Now, both phones can come with 12 gigabytes of RAM, but I think the higher storage tiers on the OnePlus 13 can be bought with 16. Quite frankly, 12 or 16, it's more than enough for everything that you're probably gonna do on these devices. The Galaxy phone does have the advantage of more software updates. 7 years compared to only 4 with the OnePlus 13. Also, Samsung tends to do a better job of getting updates quicker than OnePlus. As for the actual software experience, it's gonna be subjective, right? Like, you might like One UI over Oxygen or vice versa. I will say Oxygen OS a little cleaner, right? Less going on, very simple. I like the transparent backgrounds and the notifications. You have a lot of cool stuff that you can customize baked into the menu system. It's just a very simple looking UI. The Galaxy phone, One UI 7 has come a long way. There's every single feature you can think of baked into the phone somewhere, including DeX, which is a desktop operating system that you connect to your monitor and use it as a computer. It's in there, but it just comes down to what you like more. But when it comes to AI, I'm gonna give the slight advantage to the Galaxy S25 Ultra. There's a few more features that you can utilize if AI is important to you. But the basics are there on both phones, right? Like if I long press the power button, they're gonna load up Gemini, and then I can string a couple of commands together and AI will take care of it for me. And of course, if you swipe in the little bars on the side of the phone, it will give you AI suggestions depending on the application that you're currently using. But the one area where the OnePlus 13 does a better job is with battery life. Like, we're talking about a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, a silicon carbon battery, compared to 5,000 milliamp hours on the S25 Ultra. And based on my experience, I'm getting about maybe an hour more of use out of the OnePlus 13 compared to the S25 Ultra. In fact, my buddy Tom, the tech chap, just did a battery drain test, and the OnePlus 13 actually did very, very well. Also, if you want to top up your phone quicker, the OnePlus 13 has 80-watt wired charging, or 100 watts if you're in a different part of the world, plus 50-watt wireless charging if you have the OnePlus charger. That drops down to about 10 watts if you don't. The S25 Ultra only has 45-watt wire charging and up to 25-watt wireless charging. But if you're taking pictures with the selfie camera, the OnePlus 13 is 32 megapixels compared to 12, and they're very close, but the colors are better on the S25 Ultra. Like, my jacket is actually navy blue compared to completely black on the OnePlus 13. But portrait mode seems to be better on the OnePlus 13. It does a better job on the edges of my head, whereas the Galaxy phone kind of blurred some of those hairs. Okay, it's not that cold today. It's only 0 degrees Celsius, which in my books, it's like swimming weather here in Canada. Well, not really. Anyways, front-facing cameras. Unfortunately, it's not a super sunny day, so the phones are not going to struggle too hard. But you do have some snow, which might mess with the exposure. But yeah, 4K 30, you guys let me know which one has the better video and which one has the better microphone. The rear cameras on these phones are quite different, but the results were very surprising. Like with the Galaxy S25 Ultra, you just get more cameras. You have a 200 megapixel wide lens, a 10 megapixel 3x optical, you have a 50 megapixel periscope 5x lens, plus an upgraded 50 megapixel ultra wide lens. The OnePlus phone has a lens less, triple 50 megapixels, one's ultra wide, one does 3x optical, and of course you have the wide lens. But the photos are not that different. You know, like there's definitely some color choices from both companies. I find that the OnePlus device tends to look a bit moodier. There's a little bit of yellow introduced. They tend to crush the shadows more than the S25 Ultra, but the results are not that drastic to say the Ultra is significantly better. It's better, but not significantly better, at least when it comes to the ultra wide lens and the regular main lens. But once you start zooming out and going further, the S25 Ultra is a little bit better. Again, not a lot, but a little bit better just because it has the hardware to support it. I find at times the OnePlus 13 could get a little bit noisy. I also find it likes to very much over sharpen the image at longer distances, whereas the Galaxy device will definitely over sharpen, not as drastically, but it'll introduce a little bit of noise to compensate. As for nighttime photography, I did find the OnePlus 13 to look a little bit more consistent. Like, they were pretty much neck and neck, but there were a couple of situations where I was like, oh, okay, the OnePlus nailed the colors, whereas the Galaxy was just a little bit off. Like, especially with lens flare, the OnePlus does a better job of toning that flare down and giving you a cleaner image. Also, there's this one picture I took of the Audio 2001 sign where the OnePlus nailed the red color, whereas it looked a little off on the S25 Ultra. But as soon as you start zooming into things and using that 30 and 100 times focal distance, that's where the S25 Ultra slightly excelled. As for nighttime video, I'm giving the slight edge to the Galaxy S25 Ultra. It handled the noise a little bit better, whereas the OnePlus 13 was a bit too dark. But in daytime, it really comes down to personal preference. The OnePlus kept that color tone of the pictures by making things look a little bit more contrasty and the shadows darker than they kind of needed to be. But again, the differences weren't major. As for performance, I've never had an issue with either of these phones. They are ridiculously fast. They're technically using the same processor, but the Samsung version has been a little fine-tuned to be a tiny bit faster, but I imagine for most people, you just won't notice the difference. So the big question, which phone should you buy? Well, that's up to you. Who am I? I'm just a dude making YouTube videos. At the end of the day, you get what you truly want to get and ignore the noise. But if we're talking about the better deal, the better phone for the money, it's obviously the OnePlus 13. That's the one I would go for this price point. But maybe you're an S Pen user. Maybe you're attached to the Samsung ecosystem. Maybe you've been with Samsung for so long, you just have a loyalty to them. Then go for the S25 Ultra. It's totally up to you. And if you're someone who keeps your phone for more than 4 years, obviously the S25 Ultra makes sense too. And like I said at the beginning of this video, depending on where you live and the trade-ins you can utilize, one phone might be more affordable than the other. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.